There is a powder that medieval people used for everything. They ate it, obviously, but they also used it to heal wounds, waterproof fabric, preserve meat, clean their bodies, and even build structures that are still standing today. Flour wasn't just food, it was medicine, building material, adhesive, and the foundation of household economy. A single sack of flour in a medieval home had 20 different uses, most of which you've never heard of. Then industrialization changed everything. Flour became a single-purpose product, something you bake with and nothing else. The companies that milled it stripped out the nutrition to make it white and shelf-stable. They removed the parts that had medicinal properties. They processed it until it was essentially pure starch, empty calories that spike your blood sugar and leave you hungry. And in the process, they erased centuries of knowledge about what flour could actually do. Not just feed you, but heal you, protect you, and solve problems that modern products claim to fix with chemicals. This is what medieval households knew about flour, that the industrial food system needed you to forget. Welcome to Olden Path. If you're tired of being told that one ingredient only has one use, hit subscribe and the bell. Medieval knowledge made people self-sufficient in ways that threaten entire industries. The first thing you need to understand is that medieval flour was completely different from what's in your pantry. Modern all-purpose flour is made from wheat berries that have been stripped of the bran and germ, leaving only the endosperm. That's the starchy center. It makes white flour that stores for months without going rancid, but you've lost the fiber, the healthy fats, the vitamins, the minerals. Everything nutritious is gone. Medieval flour was stone ground from whole grains, wheat, rye, barley, sometimes mixed together depending on what was available. The entire kernel went into the flour. Bran, germ, endosperm, all of it. The result was coarse, dark flour that looked nothing like the white powder in modern bags. It had texture, it had flavor, and it had nutritional density that made it fundamentally different. Stone grinding also mattered. Modern roller mills crush grain at high speed, generating heat that damages nutrients and oxidizes fats. Stone mills grind slowly and cool, preserving everything. The flour that came off medieval millstones was alive, full of enzymes, beneficial bacteria, nutrients. It went rancid quickly, which is why households bought or milled flour regularly rather than storing it for months. That freshness meant the flour retained properties that modern flour has lost completely. Now let's talk about the uses nobody teaches anymore. Medieval households used flour paste as wound dressing. Mix flour with water into a thick paste, apply it to cuts, burns, or abrasions, and cover with cloth. The paste creates a protective barrier that keeps dirt out while the wound heals underneath. As it dries, it forms a flexible seal that doesn't crack like modern bandages. The starch absorbs moisture and minor infections, pulling them out of the wound. This wasn't folk medicine. This was standard field treatment for injuries. Soldiers carried flour in their packs specifically for wound care. When you're days from a surgeon and bleeding from a sword cut, flour paste could save your life. Flour was also used to stop bleeding. Pack a deep wound with dry flour and the starch rapidly absorbs blood, helping it clot faster. Modern medicine uses clotting powders based on similar principles, except medieval people figured it out with the ingredient they already had. No need to buy specialized products when flour does the job. For burns, flour paste applied immediately draws out heat and prevents blistering. The coolness of the wet paste soothes pain, while the barrier protects damaged skin from air exposure. Medieval kitchens, where open fires and boiling liquids created constant burn risk, kept flour accessible for exactly this reason. Modern burn treatments use expensive gels and ointments. Medieval cooks used what was already on the shelf. Medieval households used flour as a cleaning agent. Dry flour rubbed into fabric absorbs grease and oil stains. It was the original dry cleaner. Clothing that couldn't be washed, heavy wool cloaks or fur-lined garments, were cleaned by rubbing flour into the fabric, letting it absorb the oils, then brushing it out. The garment came out clean without water damage. Women used flour to clean their hair. Before shampoo existed, people applied flour to the scalp, massaged it through the hair to absorb oil and dirt, then brushed it out thoroughly. The result was clean hair without soap. This method worked particularly well in winter, when heating water for washing was difficult. You could clean your hair with flour in a cold room without discomfort. Flour mixed with vinegar created a paste used to clean metal. Copper pots, brass, fixtures, iron tools. The mild acid in vinegar combined with the abrasive texture of flour scrubbed away tarnish and oxidation without scratching the metal surface. Modern metal polishes are chemical-based and expensive. Medieval households used flour and vinegar. Flour was also used to clean leather. Rub dry flour into leather boots or gloves to absorb moisture and dirt, then brush clean. The leather stays supple and clean without the oils that modern leather cleaners use, oils that can eventually break down the leather. Now the use that really matters for self-sufficiency. Flour paste as adhesive. Mix flour with water to a thick glue-like consistency, and you have an adhesive strong enough for woodworking making, bookbinding, and paper crafts. Medieval bookbinders used flour paste to attach pages and bind covers. Those books are still intact today, 1,000 years later. The paste doesn't yellow, doesn't become brittle, and holds indefinitely in dry conditions. Carpenters used flour paste for certain joinery applications, particularly where wood needed to be joined temporarily or where metal fasteners would corrode. The paste held joints together during construction, then could be dissolved later if disassembly was needed. Wallpaper, when it became common in later medieval and Renaissance periods, was hung using flour paste. That's what wallpaper paste still is today, though most modern versions use synthetic methyl cellulose instead of actual flour. Flour was used to waterproof fabric. Mix flour with water and fat, usually tallow or lard, to create a paste. Apply it to canvas or heavy fabric and let it dry. The combination of starch and fat creates a water-resistant coating. Medieval sailors used this technique to waterproof sailcloth and tarps. The treatment had to be reapplied periodically as weather wore it away, but it worked without any of the chemical treatments modern waterproofing requires. Flour paste was also used to seal cracks in barrels and wooden containers. Mix flour with water and work it into gaps between staves. As the paste dries, it swells slightly and hardens, creating a seal that prevents leaks. Coopers used this technique for quick repairs when a barrel started leaking during transport. In construction, flour mixed with lime was used as an ingredient in some plaster formulations. The flour acted as a binder and retardant, slowing the lime's setting time and making the plaster easier to work. It also improved adhesion to certain surfaces. This wasn't the primary use of flour. Lime mortar worked fine without it, but in situations where extra workability was needed, flour was added. Medieval plasterers understood empirically that organic starches modified the properties of lime in useful ways. Flour paste was used in poultice making. Mix flour with ground herbs, apply to infections, boils, or swellings. The paste holds the herbs against the skin while drawing out infection. As the poultice dries, it pulls moisture and toxins from the wound. This was standard medieval medical treatment for abscesses and infected wounds. The flour itself wasn't medicinal, but it was the delivery system that made herbal medicine work effectively. Modern medicine uses similar principles with medicated patches and transdermal delivery, except medieval people did it with flour and herbs from the garden. Livestock care also used flour. For animals with digestive issues, flour mixed with water into a thin gruel was easier to digest than whole grain. Sick animals that couldn't chew properly could still consume nutrition in liquid form. Farmers used flour paste to treat hoof problems in horses and cattle, packing it into cracks or damaged areas to protect while healing occurred. Flour mixed with medicinal herbs was fed to livestock as treatment for internal parasites and digestive disorders. The flour made the bitter herbs palatable and helped the medicine move through the digestive system. Now here's where it gets interesting. Medieval households used different grains for different purposes. Wheat flour was premium used, primarily for bread and food. Rye flour was cheaper and used for both food and non-food applications. Barley flour was considered inferior for bread, but excellent for poultices and external applications because it absorbed moisture so effectively. Oat flour, when available, was used in cleaning applications and as animal feed. Households maintained multiple types of flour because each had specific properties that made it better for certain uses. Modern kitchens typically have one type of white flour. Medieval kitchens had 4 or 5 different grains ground to varying coarseness for different applications. The versatility of flour meant that a household with access to grain and a hand mill was dramatically more self-sufficient than one without. You could produce your own food, your own medicine, your own adhesives, your own cleaning products, all from the same basic ingredient. That independence is exactly what industrial manufacturing needed to destroy. If people can make their own adhesive from flour, they don't buy glue. If they can clean with flour, they don't buy soap and shampoo. If they can treat wounds with flour paste, they don't buy bandages and antiseptic. Every use of flour that wasn't eating represented lost sales for someone trying to sell a specialized product. So the food industry did 2 things. First, they changed flour itself. They removed the bran and germ, which eliminated the properties that made flour useful for medicine and external applications. Whole grain flour has oils and enzymes that give it adhesive and absorbent properties. White flour is just starch. It doesn't work the same way in non-food applications. Second, they convinced people that specialized products were superior, that you needed dedicated adhesives, cleaners, and wound care products, that using food ingredients for non-food purposes was primitive and unsanitary. Within a few generations, the knowledge of flour's versatility was erased. People forgot that their grandparents cleaned with flour, healed with flour, built with flour. It became just a baking ingredient, nothing more, but some communities never forgot. Traditional herbalists still use flour in poultice making. Old-school bookbinders still use flour paste because it's archival and reversible. Homesteaders and preppers are rediscovering that flour has uses modern products can't match. You can't make adhesive from a bottle of glue if the store is closed, but you can always make make it from flour if you have grain and a way to grind it. The modern equivalent of medieval flour is whole grain flour, stone ground, purchased fresh, or milled at home. It won't store as long as white flour because the oils in the germ go rancid, but those oils are exactly what give it the properties that white flour lacks. If you want to use flour the way medieval people did, you need flour that hasn't been stripped and processed into pure starch. Whole wheat, whole rye, whole spelt, any whole grain flour, stone ground will work. Modern roller milled whole wheat flour is better than white flour, but still damaged by heat during processing. Stone ground is ideal. For wound care, modern regulations make this complicated. Technically, using flour as a wound dressing violates food safety rules because you're using a food product for medical purposes. But in emergency situations, when professional medical care isn't available, the knowledge that flour can stop bleeding and protect wounds could save a life. Medieval soldiers didn't have antiseptic and antibiotics. They had flour, and they survived injuries that modern people think require hospital treatment. For adhesive use, flour paste is still superior to many modern glues for certain applications. It's water-soluble, so mistakes can be corrected. It's archival, so it doesn't degrade or yellow over time. It's non-toxic, so it's safe for use around food and children. And it costs essentially nothing. A tablespoon of flour mixed with water gives you enough adhesive for most household repairs. For cleaning, flour still works exactly as it did in medieval times. Grease stain on fabric, rub flour into it, let it sit, brush it out. The flour absorbs the grease. Try it on something you were going to throw away anyway and you'll see it works. Dry shampoo? That's literally powdered starch, which is what flour is. The medieval method of cleaning hair with flour is identical to modern dry shampoo, except it costs a fraction as much. The broader lesson is this: medieval people lived in a world where specialization didn't exist the way it does now. They couldn't buy a different product for every need, so they learned to use what they had for multiple purposes. Flour was food, medicine, adhesive, cleaner, building material, all because people understood its properties and applied them creatively. Modern life is the opposite. We have specialized products for everything, each designed for a single purpose, each requiring purchase. That specialization creates dependence. You need to buy dozens of different products to accomplish what medieval people did with flour alone. The shift happened gradually as industrial manufacturing grew. Companies needed markets for their products. They created those markets by convincing people that specialized products were necessary, that you couldn't possibly clean your hair with flour, you needed shampoo, that you couldn't treat a wound with flour paste, you needed bandages and antiseptic, that you couldn't make adhesive from flour, you needed to buy glue. Each specialized product represented a new dependency, a new recurring purchase, a new profit stream, and each one replaced knowledge that had made people self-sufficient. This applies to everything, not just flour. Medieval households used a limited number of basic ingredients for a huge range of applications: salt, vinegar, fat, ash, herbs. Each had multiple uses that modern people have forgotten because we've been sold specialized replacements for all of them. Reclaiming that knowledge means reclaiming independence. It means understanding that the ingredients you already have can solve problems that modern marketing tells you require specialized products. If this changed how you think about what's in your pantry, subscribe to Olden Path and hit the bell. Share this with people who want to be less dependent on buying specialized products for everything. Comment and tell me if you've ever used flour for something other than baking. This isn't just about flour, it's about reclaiming the resourcefulness that made people self-sufficient, the knowledge that industrial manufacturing had to erase so they could sell you 20 products to replace one ingredient.